On our Jewish calendar, today is the 17th of Tammuz. 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is the commemoration of the destruction of the first and second temples, this day, the 17th of Tammuz, among other things, marks the initial breach of the walls of the second temple by the Romans. It is a fast day and also begins a 3-week period of mourning during which many Jews abstain from shaving or cutting their hair, eating meat, and celebrating festive events like weddings. Obviously, this year, today, the 17th of Tammuz takes on additional meaning given the events of the last month in the Middle East and the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. So we gather together this evening as a community, as Jews have always done, in order to draw comfort, strength, and fortitude as we demonstrate our solidarity and our support for the state of Israel in the midst of this recent conflict. Beth Emeth is pleased to host this evening's gathering, and along with my colleagues, our staff, our lay leadership headed by our temple president, Lauren Islin, certainly we at Beth Emeth join our prayers and our hopes with those of the entire community in praying for peace. So to begin this evening, I invite all of my colleagues of the Capital Region to join me on the Bimah, along with Father Jim Kane from the Roman Catholic Diocese, from the Ecumenical Commission, a dear friend to the Jewish community who's with us this evening, which means so much to us. Along with Father Kane, all of my colleagues, as we offer this prayer for the state of Israel and for the IDF. Jim. David, are you?
Sur Yisrael v'goalo, rock and protector of the people Israel, watch over the residents of the state of Israel who live under the persistent and ongoing threat of destructive missiles. Protect them from harm and strengthen their resolve at this moment of crisis, and calm them until the danger is past. Grant wisdom to Israel's political leaders so that they may navigate the difficult days ahead with insight and understanding. Strengthen the hearts of Israel's generals as they direct the Israel Defense Forces in its efforts to bring safety to Israel. God of hosts, sovereign of peace, protect the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces serving on land, in the air, and at sea, as well as all those who engage in defense and rescue operations. Save them, Adonai, from all trouble and distress. Crown their efforts with success and bless them in all their endeavors. May they go out in peace and return to their homes and families for life and peace. Avinu Shabashamayim, our Father in heaven, bring peace to the land of Israel and eternal peace to all its residents. Guard and watch over all who are now caught up in the maelstrom of military action, Israelis and Palestinians. Send healing to those who are injured, comfort to those who mourn, and serenity of spirit to those forced to seek shelter from the rockets that are falling. Fulfill for us the words of our sacred text, and peace shall reign in the land, and you shall lie down, and no one will terrify you. Spread the shelter of your peace on all the residents of the Holy Land, speedily in our days. May it be your will, Adonai, that war and bloodshed be eliminated from the world, so that a great and enduring peace will reign throughout the earth, so that nation will not lift up sword against nation, nor practice the art of war. May all humanity come to understand the essential truth that we are not here on earth to be proponents of war and bloodshed, strife and conflict, but rather that we are here to acknowledge your sanctity and see that sanctity reflected in all human beings as we have been created in your divine image. May it soon come to pass that each person shall sit under his vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid, because the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken. And let us say, Amen.
Good evening. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We stand together as we have stood countless times before to show our solidarity with the people of Israel. Like all times, we pray together for peace, for a time when these gatherings will no longer be necessary. For the past 8 years, we have enjoyed a partnership with the Eshkol region of Israel. This past year, about 120 of us from this community, including 29 of our high school students, visited this beautiful area which sits on the Gaza border. Last November, without missiles and rockets, I was there. I saw blue skies. I saw green fields. I saw happy children. Behind the scenes, I also saw that the entire high school was reinforced to survive missile attacks. 2 years ago, we asked our partners in Eshkol how we could be helpful to them. They asked for help in renovating their trauma center to make it a safe building to withstand missile attacks. Within a few days, we raised the money that they needed, and we were there for the ribbon cutting this past December. And not a minute too soon. The trauma center has been in constant use during the past few days. I want to share with you excerpts from a letter written to us last week from our friend Yardena in Eshkol. Many of us who went to Eshkol on one of the recent trips in the last year got to meet Yardena. Yardena writes as follows. On Wednesday, June 2nd, around 8 o'clock in the evening, we heard the warning for red alert that shattered in an instant the countryside peacefulness of our moshav. When the warning sounded, I used my 15 seconds to run to the hallway in my home, which is supposed to be the safest place in my house. I heard the shriek and then the explosion of the rocket very close to my house. It's hard to imagine the traumatic experience when the rocket shook my house inside and out. It was like a physical earthquake in your body, which happened in a place called home, which supposedly protects you. From this trauma and the frustration uncontrollably, tears welled up in my eyes. Although the windows were all broken on the north side of my house, I realized that I was okay, and I immediately ran to see my neighbor. I thought that maybe it fell on her house. Maybe I could be of help in some way. In fact, the rocket fell even closer to her house than mine. I returned home and immediately picked up the phone to find out about my 3 children and grandchildren. 2 days later, my son Itamar came to see what happened to the house. He picked up his daughter from the kindergarten in a nearby kibbutz and came to visit. As I went with them to the car to say goodbye, we again heard the warning which alerted the 3 of us to race immediately to the safest part of the house, to sit on the floor in the hallway once again. The The look in Amalia's eyes, the fear as she looked at her father, and the helplessness of both Itamar and myself made Amalia hug her father tighter and tighter. In a moment, we're going to hear from Professor Burke. He's going to update us on the situation, and then we will have an opportunity to help, as we always do. We will help Yardena and help our friends in Eshkol. We'll help relocate children out of harm's way. We'll provide counseling, and we'll distribute safety equipment. The few people who met this past Friday to plan this rally have already kicked off the campaign with $10,000 in gifts. Before we get to the fundraising, however, let's hear from Dr. Burke. Stephen M. Burke is an internationally respected authority on American foreign policy in the Middle East and frequently serves as a consultant for television, radio stations, and newspaper reporters. An inspiring orator, he has lectured worldwide on issues relating to anti-Semitism, Israel, the Holocaust, and American Jewish and Russian history. He has led numerous trips to Russia, Spain, Europe, Israel, and Eastern Europe. He serves as a scholar in residence for Federation missions to Washington, D.C., and as our scholar in residence on our recent mission. You ready to go?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Go for it.
On behalf of Israel and the Jewish Federation, I thank you for coming. I tell my students ad nauseum, history is not stagnant. It's fluid. It's always changing. I think I'm right. It's always changing. But I'm not 100% right. Because there are some things in this world that do not change. And one of them is the hostility, the ferocious hostility in large segments of the Islamic world, particularly in the Islamic Middle East, towards the state of Israel and to the Jewish people. This may not be politically correct, but no one ever accused me of being politically correct. So let me begin. In 1947, the United Nations, at the end of November of 1947, voted for Resolution 181, partitioning Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Zionist movement accepted it. The Arab world and the Palestinian leadership rejected it. Do you understand the significance of that? Sometimes a people make a mistake. This was a colossal mistake. If the Palestinians had accepted Resolution 181, we would be celebrating the 66th anniversary of a Palestinian state. There wouldn't be a single Palestinian refugee, and those wars and that violence would not have taken place. In 1967, Nasser called for the destruction of the state of Israel. 1973, further calls for the destruction of the state of Israel. Terrorists of all organizations call for the destruction of the state of Israel. And when Hamas talks about a future, the elegant phraseology is, we are going to create a Palestinian state between the river and the sea. The river is the Jordan, the sea is the Mediterranean. You do not have to be a wizard of geography to come to understand that Hamas does not envision a sovereign Jewish state in even a truncated part of Palestine. And when it comes to the Jews, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Hezbollah have something very interesting to say. Now, I may not be the best historian in the world. I think I'm a good historian. But I know, I'd bet the family jewels on this one. Hamas says that Jews, not Israelis, not Zionists, were responsible for the French Revolution of 1789. That's a reach. Take it from me, that's a reach. That the Jews are responsible for the revolutions of 1848. That the Jews are responsible for both world wars. Not the Zionists, not the Israelis, the Jews. The Jews are responsible for virtually everything that is wrong upon this planet. Sheikh Nasrallah of Hezbollah says What a terrible pity that all the Jews in the world have not gathered in Israel so they could be destroyed in one blow. That's not a moderate statement. And the rulers of Iran, non-Arabic Iran, talk about Israel as a cancer that must be wiped off the face of the earth. These are the underlying factors responsible for the current conflagration. The more immediate factors are that Hamas, up until, probably now as well, was in a very serious position. Number one, President Sisi of Egypt declared war on the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is a branch, an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. And President Sisi, let's say, closed 80 to 90% of all the tunnels going from Egypt into Gaza. In addition to that, finally, Hamas, which is not the smartest organization in town, Hamas finally decided it was not in its interest to support Bashar Assad of Syria in the civil war that was going on. That is, most Sunnis in Syria were opposed to the Assad regime. So, of course, what did Assad do after Hamas declared its support for the rebels? Assad kicked them out. Damascus was a place of refuge for Hamas. It's not there anymore. And since Iran is a supporter of Assad's regime, when Hamas broke with Assad, the money began to dry up. And in addition to that, Hamas found itself in a difficult position because it could not pay the 42,000 civil servants who worked for Hamas. The money was running short. Hamas was up against the wall. Hamas is trying to enhance its position in the Islamic world, to make sure that everyone sees Hamas as being on the front line against the Israelis. That, I think, is why Hamas has engaged in this type of activity. Now, I'm often asked the question, will there be a ground invasion? And the honest answer is, I know where I'm standing, so I have to watch my language, and that is, I really don't know. I'm not a Novi. I'm not a prophet. I'm a historian. I will tell you a number of things, however. One is that a ground invasion will be very costly for Israel and for the people in Gaza. It'll be house to house, alley to alleyway. I suspect that at least 200 Israelis will die if there is fighting within Gaza. I hope it doesn't come to that. And of course, countless numbers of Palestinians will die. I will also tell you that this is an issue that you and I should not get into. That is, whether Israel should invade Gaza is an Israeli decision. The Israelis are the ones that will pay the price. It's their sons and daughters that will die. It is their job, the Israeli government, a democratically elected government, it's their decision to whether or not to go into Gaza. Now, whether or not Israel should go into Gaza, there are certain things that are unequivocal and unambiguous. I will say it twice. Israel is in the right. Israel is in the right. There is no country in the world that would have stood by being under attack. With its settlements, its towns, its cities, its kibbutzim, its moshavim, its settlements, thousands of rockets have fallen, and they began to fall long before those terrible murders took place. In short, Israel has the right to defend itself. In addition to that, the Israeli Air Force has shown incredible restraint. CNN posts the number of Palestinians that have been killed and the number of Israelis, as if to indicate that this is disproportional. There are 1,700,000 Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip. 200 at a maximum have been killed. If this were genocide, as Mahmoud Abbas has said, you can bet your last shekel that indeed we would be talking about tens upon tens of thousands of Palestinians dead. And Prime Minister Netanyahu is right when he said in a good statement, he said, we use our missiles to defend civilians. They use civilians to defend their missiles. That's a problem. How do you get these people out? Now you got to forgive me for being a historian. I am a student and I teach the Second World War. Let me tell you this. In the Second World War, we bombed Germany by day and the Royal Air Force bombed Germany by night. If both of our air forces had operated under the restrictions that the Israeli Air Force is operating on, that war would not have been over in May of 1945. By bombing German cities, we forced Hitler to bring back the Luftwaffe to defend the German homeland, the Heimat, which meant that when we landed at Normandy on June 6th of 1944, we had control of the skies. And when the Red Army took Auschwitz on January 27th of 45, the Red Army had dominance over the skies. Air power is not a surgical strike. It is a tribute to the Israeli Defense Forces that the casualties are so low, and the ultimate culpability, the ultimate blame for civilian deaths in the Gaza Strip rests with Hamas. There should be no ambiguity about that whatsoever. All right, my friends, ready for me? Here I come. Let's talk tachlis, right? What Napoleon said in the early 18th, that's not, in the early 19th century, what von Clausewitz said at the end of the 18th century is true today. Money is the artery of war. Or I'll put it in our own terminology. One of the most prominent American rabbis in 1940 had even a more difficult time in Jewish history. You know what he said to a Jewish audience? If you have a rendezvous with destiny, you better make sure you come on time. This is our time. The first and only Jewish state in 2,000 years is under attack. Tens of thousands of Israelis have been traumatized. Money is needed to provide psychological assistance. Money is needed to provide the rebuilding of hospitals, the rebuilding of shelters, the rebuilding of buildings, the rebuilding of all sorts of things, the rebuilding of lives. It is necessary to do this. Our parents and our grandparents understood this. We are the securest, we are the wealthiest Jewish community that ever seen the light of day in the 3,500 years history of our people. What was true before is true now. If you've got a decent bone in your body, it is now time to come to the defense of this first and only Jewish state in 2,000 years. I am proud to say that one of the people, perhaps the first one to step forward, are friends of mine and friends of yours. They always step forward. The Price Chopper people, Jane and Neil Golub, they've announced a $10,000. A $10,000 matching gift for the first $10,000 that comes in. This is our time. If Israelis continue to show perseverance, continue to show courage, if we continue to give Israel the political and financial support that it needs, then it can be said of us, and only if we do this can it be said of us, Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish people, despite everything that has happened, we are alive and we are well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. In an effort to consolidate donations and streamline the process of getting funds to where they are most needed, the Stop the Sirens campaign is being co-sponsored by the Union for Reform Judaism and the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism and several of our Federation's overseas partners. It is now time for action. Please use the form on the back of your program or pick up a new form from the desk in the lobby. Be generous. Take advantage of the Golub $10,000 challenge grant. They're very, very sorry they couldn't be here this evening to learn from you, Steve. Israel is the country whose national anthem, Hatikva, means hope. Israel is the home of hope. Please rise as we join Cantor Groper in singing Hatikva.
כל עוד בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומייה, ולפתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון סופיה. עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בשנות הבאים, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
Thank you all for coming, and please use those forms and give generously, and hopefully the peace will come and a ceasefire will come, and we won't have to do these programs anymore.